Morning, guys.
Morning, Yandela.
Morning, James.
Morning, Lee.
I'm driving, so I'm going to mute myself now and won't chitter chatter. I will just listen. Okay.
Perfect, no problem.
Thank you.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, Zach, and welcome.
Thank you.
Morning, Brad. Morning, Brittany. Mike.
Morning.
Morning, Frank.
Morning. Hello, Doug. There I am. Okay, cool. Sorry, excuse the background.
No problem.
It's a shambles.
Morning, Brian.
Hey Dirk, how's it going?
Good yourself.
Okay, thank you.
How's the drumming going?
Haven't played in a while. Adulting sucks.
Yeah. You got a long way to go still, bud.
My back tells me that.
Okay, just wait a few minutes more. Zach, I think it's your first time with the group. Would you like to just introduce yourself and just tell us a bit about yourself?
I wasn't ready for Ben Duffy, but so yeah, I'm Zach. I'm 34 years old. I'm part of Affinity Wealth, which is a new FSP. We got our license in March last year. I am the only rep on the license, which is fun. Also recently became the KR, which is also fun. Before that, I was part of the Hereford group, and I was actually in Hereford risk management. So I was on the short-term side for about 7 years. And that whole time I built really good relationships with guys on the long-term side, specifically in their brokerage, Hampshire. Yeah, and I think over time, and I think I'm on the wrong side of the industry. I've got more of an affinity towards, face-to-face with people and doing planning, as opposed to on the short-term side, which can be super onerous in terms of administration. You're on a brow with the mate, and then there's a phone call about some Giza issue. And, for me, that was not as meaningful as what we get to do here. So I did the switch and have no regrets. And that's basically me. I'm here to learn. And thanks to Brian for kind of introducing me to the group. I've had a couple Zoom calls with Brian. He caught my attention on LinkedIn when you put out some post. And yeah, this kind of introduced me to looks like a new world, if I can call it that, or a new perspective. So yeah, happy to be here.
Okay, great, Zach. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we can get started, guys. So yeah, I thought today we're all about trying to look at things which are practical, which we can apply on a day-to-day basis. Either as individual advisors or part of a smaller practice or even part of a bigger business. And I know that there'll be many variations of what we actually deliver. So I think starting off, probably the majority of advisors in the industry don't do any planning. I think we know that. They're basically still, I think most of them are still in sales, and they're chasing targets and everything, which is unfortunate. And then we'll have people who will do a so-called plan, but the final outcome will always be a product, a sale of sorts. which is probably better than just hard sales, but still isn't really anything like what we do, you know, in lifestyle financial planning. And I think it's quite it's something that needs to be spoken about because, you know, for instance, we all know the Financial Planner of the Year award, and not to be controversial, but you know, the entry form is still, you know, you've got to produce something like a 60-page plan or whatever it is. If you look at all the requirements, the structure that they give you. And I think there are very few people that practically do that for their clients, and there are probably very good reasons for that. And we as a business, we've gone the whole route of devising one of those types of plans, and then almost come full circle back to really not doing that. But again, that's how we operate. I think what we realize in client care is that financial planning is so it's not a noun, it's actually a verb. It's something which is ongoing. In our business, we like to build healthy, ongoing relationships, long-term relationships, versus being more transactional. So that's just how we work. So we found that very often, you know, you can do a plan give it to a client on a Friday at 2 p.m. and by 8 o'clock Monday morning, it's really worth nothing because something could have happened that weekend that has changed their situation completely. Now, I'm not saying there shouldn't be a plan. What I'm saying is that, you know, things can change very quickly. And I believe the relationship we need to be looking to build with clients is one where there's a lot of two-way communication, and it's a real relationship that the client could pick up or WhatsApp you on a Saturday or Sunday and say, listen, this has happened. And then the situation's completely different. And because you've got to know that client, you're now able to assist them with this new situation. So then the question is, okay, well then what do we give people? What do we give clients? Because there's all this thing about a plan, you know, and it's like something which is you can touch and you can feel and you can look at. So I'll just start by saying what we really do is we actually don't do that. We don't actually give a plan in a beautiful folder. We used to in the past. What we find is clients would come and see us 6 months later. The thing hadn't even been opened. They haven't looked at it. They haven't commented on it. They certainly haven't read it. And we try to keep it as short as possible with all the relevant information in. And relevance, again, to different clients is different. So to a more analytical person, they would want to see a lot more of the workings or assumptions. And then we have people who say, give me 1 page. And if you follow Carl, well, then you will know, you know, he's devised a 1-page plan. We've dipped into that. Ben's done some work on that, which is really good. But I just thought, what we can do is maybe work around the room. And as I said in the WhatsApp, there's absolutely no judgment on this. I think everyone will do this differently. And I think as long as we are building the correct relationship with a client, which is a relationship of care and concern, and it's a long-term relationship, then, and we're doing proper planning, then we're doing our jobs well. But I'm quite interested in what other people are doing. So what we do is after every single meeting, a client gets very thorough minutes. And in those minutes is everything that we've discussed, everything that we've agreed with them that will happen. And then there's often a list of these are the things that we're going to do. And I think we all know that when you bring on a new client and you start working with them, very often it can take a year before you've implemented everything that needs to happen. You know, you've got the will sorted out, you fixed up the beneficiaries, you've got the risk cover in place, you've looked at trusts or whatever. So these things you've settled, helped them settle debt or reposition debt. There's a lot that happens, and very often it doesn't happen overnight because clients are busy. So we give thorough minutes. We use the IWP as a modeling tool to show the clients where they are, where they were, where they are now. And when we do our reviews, we'll use that model, and all we do is we update it, we redate it to, so now would be November 2022, and we show them where they are. And very quickly, clients, as long as they see that whale graph going past 100, they're quite happy. We also use asset map. We haven't used it much, but clients we have used it really like it, and will often just come and say, can you give me that thing again? So those are, we got other tools we use as well, but those are the two main tools that we use. So asset map, we can send them an update of what that looks like with the updated values. The RWP, we can send them snippets of it, and we can accompany those in the minutes, some who ask for it. But we're not actually producing a plan, a written plan, a document in a smart cover or whatever. So that's what we do. And Brian, I'm going to pick on you because you're a celeb at the moment, you know, with having your awards and your podcasts, and you've done really, really well, buddy. So and we have a lot of respect for the work that you do. So let us know what you do, please.
Yeah, thanks. 100% not prepared for this, but we'll see what happens. So what we've done is we also use the same tool as you, so Wealth Integrator, Old Mutual Wealth's financial planning tool. And so what I've done is, because of the process we utilize, we plan with the clients. I think a lot of us here maybe never used to, but I think a lot of us plan with the clients. So the client will at the end of the day get a plan from me. The plan document, we create something a bit more bespoke using the Wealth Integrator system. So we kind of leave out what's not required. We include all of the planning, you know, like you talk about the whale graphs and all of that. The clients won't look at that, and we never discuss that with the client in a follow-up meeting, because they were in the planning. They know what's there, and they're part of the process. For what's important for me to include there is what we include is the agreed action. So the things that we are going to do in terms of, maybe it's financial behavior like income and expenses, maybe it's product related investment strategies, all of those things we will include in that plan. So after we've done the planning, we do 3 plans. We do stages of planning. There's life, legacy, and disability. So once we're done with all of the planning, we will then have to go, and realistically, we always do some recommendations, even if it's just tweaking existing product portfolios to align it with the plan now. That is advice. Unfortunately, that is now advice. It's such as the products. And so I will record all of that in the middle of the document. So all the before pictures and the before scenarios, what we're going to do, and then the after scenarios. So in the middle of that, we record all the advice, and it's very conversational. The writing is very conversational. So I don't use a lot of big words. I will use the words that we would have used when we were in our planning sessions and discussing what we're doing and why we're doing it. The nice thing about templated software, when you spend some time on it, is you can put in a lot of the words or the language you need to put in terms of disclaimers and so on. Why are you investing in this fund, or inflation 4 to 5 strategy, or whatever. So we will bring those in wherever relevant, and we'll also include at the end of, as annexures, information about the type of product. So if we have to open an endowment, for instance, you know, we have the brochure, what is an endowment? So the plan itself, the planning document, is relatively lengthy. However, it's about, normally, for a simple estate, it's about 18 pages, I think. For a more comprehensive estate, it's about 20 odd, high 20s. But what we do with the client is we'll have that meeting, and we'll just go straight to the agreed actions. And then I'll go straight to explaining to them what the products are, how it works, why it should be in a life wrapped product, for instance. And I use a lot of analogies when I do that to explain, like it's a cloaking device for tax, or whatever the case may be, and to just bring it across. And I'll use words like that in my plan as well. Compliance guy seems to be fine with it. So then at the end of the day, that whole planning document for me, because your FNA is in there, like a list of all assets and all that rubbish. So that is actually my ROA as well, record of advice. And the only thing I might add on to that is, if there is a product replacement, I generally don't do product replacements because it's not always beneficial for the client. And also it's just not really beneficial for me. So I try and avoid them. But if I have to do a product replacement, that'll be a separate document. It won't be in the actual plan. I believe we can put it in the plan, but it just becomes like so tedious. So for me, if I can just kind of like recap that, a lot of the stuff we discussed in the planning sessions, I never go over again, but it is in the document. But we just discuss what we're going to do different, and then we give the information to the client about what that entails in terms of products and strategies and that type of thing.
Okay, so do you do that at the end of your process when you're onboarding a new client?
Yeah, so once we've done the 3 stages of planning, we will then go and do that. So I'm busy doing that right now for a client. I haven't even started.
Okay.
And I met with her last week, Wednesday. And so I told her I need 2 to 3 weeks. And the reason is because I will also now get some quotes. She needs some cover, additional cover for impairment, whatever. So we will do that at the end of the process. I must say, though, I do kind of play it by ear with some clients. So I have a client who appointed me a while back, I think in April, and he is and he is formerly like a DIY investor type of guy. So he's got like millions of rands on like products that we can't intermediate on. And he realized that he was living and investing without a plan. So he wanted to find a planner. So he found me. And so we've been working together, and he's now, I realized his whole estate was a mess. His business is a whole different story. It's so much risk there. It's ridiculous. So we've had massive discussions about how to potentially restructure his business, and his business is not my client. But we're going through that, and we're working through all of that. And he says, look, yeah, he's getting fidgety now. He needs to do some stuff with his apps. He needs to fire off some instructions and get a product set up. And we worked out he doesn't have enough, and what he needs to do to get enough. It's probably about 22,000 rands directed towards new investments he has to find and then invest. He's found about 16 to 17 just due to budgeting. So now he wants to implement that. So I said, look, yeah, there's still legacy planning, there's still disability. So we kind of made a compromise. I said, fine, we're gonna bucket or chunk the work, and we're going to say, let's first do investment or life planning. So we've done life planning. We're busy with recommendations now, and then he will go implement on his side with his apps and stuff like that. Then we will do the legacy planning, which is going to be, all of your estate planning, death, and then disability all in one. And that's just so he can kind of scratch that itch and to get the dopamine and implement products and stuff. It's fine. And so then I've kind of strayed slightly from my process, and I've broken it into 2 groups.
Okay, and then Brian, have you been through reviews yet? So when a client gets that initial plan, so let's say it's just a normal client, and they get their 16-page plan with everything and the recommendations and the action points. Do you then later on, or do you review that? Are you renewing that? I know this is maybe a bit new, so you're not sure what you're going to do or what you've done, and I'm sure it's changed.
Yeah, it has changed quite a lot. I am going through currently people who have been with me as a LFP client for about 2 years now. So right now I'm preparing for 2 review meetings. So the way we structure it is maybe a bit different. So every year we do annual forward planning. So we redo the whole plan. And so the last year's plan or whatever that we implemented becomes the current. And then we kind of evolve it. So that becomes it. We kind of plan from there. And then I've saved their first ever initial scenario as like, say they appointed me in 2021 or whatever. I've saved that where they just came as a point of entry into our business. And that is something we will refer back to and say, look how far you've come versus where you are now. Because from year to year, 12 months, obviously it's incremental. And sometimes it's worse depending on maybe what's happened in the investment world or whatever. So what I then do, I go to the modeling screen and I say, let's just compare where you came from and just contextualize the last 12 months versus the previous 36 months, for instance. So we have that available. And so every year we do that big planning meeting upon the anniversary of the relationship. 6 months later, we do like a review meeting. So this meeting is no planning. I will remind them of what they've got in terms of their financial portfolio. And then I talk them through each item and I educate them or re-educate them about it, why they have it. The reason I do that is because I've had a lot of clients come to me who felt hoodwinked by their previous advisors and all of that. Like there was a level of mistrust. And I asked why, and they said they don't know what's going on in their portfolio. They don't know what's going on in their life. They don't understand anything. So that for me is like an educational hour where I remind them of why we're doing things. I don't really review performance at all. But we do, like I will for the strategy funds, we utilize their inflation targeters, and I will include like outcomes. And then I'll talk a bit to, oh my gosh, you see that -5? Yeah, well, you know, I'll explain a bit about why that might have happened or whatever. But it's more about educating. And then after, often they will come with a lot of questions about why they have it. Do they need more or whatever? And then I'll remind them of the planning and how that impacts the products. So that's what I call like a reason to meet, is that massive review, product review meeting. But also just for me, it ticks that phase box of reviewing the products every year, because in the planning session, we don't discuss products. We don't discuss performance. I just update values based on what's available on the platforms and so on. And then in between that, I have accountability check-ins with the clients. So if there was action points to do on each big meeting in the year, that between those meetings, so it's 3 months, where will be, did we implement this? Have you implemented that? Or there were changes to be made, let's meet up and sign, or whatever the case may be. And so the process for us, the review meeting, is purely product, and then it's financial education and answering questions. Planning meeting, which a lot of people might call a review meeting, there we just focus on bigger picture in their life and their strategy.
Okay, great. But you're not redoing that original document.
No, we just evolve it, take it forward. And on our system, we utilize that review thing. So we will go there and utilize that and just say, looking forward, what changes do we want to make? But but the plan itself, we redo. We will have the same discussions, but it will be much quicker. So like we'll look at what has maybe changed in terms of legacy planning, estate planning, and updated values for everything as well. But it won't be that journey of discovery to get to that point all over again.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, just to quickly say, we also do minimum of 2 meetings a year. When we finish the initial onboarding, 6 months later, it's just really a coffee catch up, what's changed, anything going on. If something serious, that hopefully have contacted us. And then every 12 months, we do a full review where they update their budget and all of that. What we've realized is, because that first year goes quite quickly, to do a full in-depth review, it's actually a bit soon. So we found in the second or maybe even the third year, what we do then is we revisit the original plan we put together. So this is, again, we haven't given them anything written. Well, they've got very comprehensive minutes, so that it's in there. But we then say, okay, 2 years ago, these were your goals. Has anything changed? Various areas of your life. And then we also do the same. We show them the well graph, where they are now versus there, and discuss that. Because we've just, and then what we're trying to introduce now is, in the meetings in between, is to focus on something a bit more specific. If, for instance, we know there's a big family, we'll maybe dig a little deeper into what's going on in the family, and not just, is you're well up to date, but okay, how will it actually play out? So if you've got 3 or 4 kids and one's divorced and you've got a grandchild with a problem, have we thought a little bit more about things you can perhaps do there? So we're trying to develop that as well. And then we also do a lot of the ongoing education, because you're quite right. We include that in our first 3 meeting process, but people do forget it and they learn slowly. So, in our annual review, we will always touch on, again, basic principles around inflation and real returns and stuff like that. Okay. Great. Thanks, man. Frank. Yes, sorry.
So Dirk, just quickly, how valuable for you is Asset Map in that kind of product review meeting, the educational meeting? Because I do it kind of semi-manually, and it's a loss of note, but I know that you guys have Asset Map, and I'm sure that must add tons of value.
To be honest, Brian, we've used it sparingly to start with, but few clients that we've used it really like it. They call it whatever they call it, but they like it. And I think what they like is the graphic around it. then we often have to explain, well, these are your retirement funds and your income, and this is this. So, but we are looking at using it more because we do believe it's a visual tool which people like. Whereas you can send them a snapshot of the IWP graph, but then, whereas with the asset map, they can kind of draw on it and that. So we are looking to introduce it, but it's quite a challenge when you got all these things trying to find their place. And some people will really like something and others will really like something different. So again, it's about trying to meet the client where they are. Some want more detail. Some just want to know the overhead story. So yeah. Thanks, Brian. Thanks. Frank, can you help us with what you guys do in your business?
Yeah, we had to reinvent the wheel completely, but not. Yeah, so we just sort of stripped everything out, and we wanted to start again in terms of the advice. I mean, Brian, you made some very good points about there was a massive amount of distrust that came out of COVID. People were, let's say, led down the garden path a lot of the time. So we had to, with our existing clients, there was also a lot of rebuilding. Not really from our side, but from the FSPs, that the people that felt left down, they hadn't had access, blah, blah, blah. So we went right back, and then this guy is, I mean, he's annoying, but he's very effective. A guy called, it's Dave Ramsey, okay? So baby steps. And we just boiled it down to, because a lot of our clients were coming back to us and saying, well, I'm off plan now. I'm way behind. What are you going to do? How are you going to help me? And if you can't help me, we're going to go and look elsewhere. And, the last thing you can say is, well, you can't keep blaming Jacob Zuma for everything. You just got to take it on. But it forced us to look at finding remedy as our approach. That if things were not right, we weren't just going to say, oh, we've got to stick it out. You just got to put more money in. That's one of the remedies, but there are many other ways we can do it. So we wanted to start somewhere that we would have, that we could actually talk to our serve before we sell mantra, which is not an easy thing because you don't really make any money out of serving. And we are in this business to make money, but we had to take a much longer term view. So we have partnered with a very good business around debt restructuring and debt mitigation. And I mean, it was quite, it's quite a useful thing to go through because, if a guy can't afford to buy your product down the line, you're wasting your time. I mean, you're going to cause him a lot of stress. You're going to cause yourself a lot of stress. And ultimately, if you take any upfront on life, you're going to have drawbacks, which is not a healthy place to be. So we enter the business, we enter the relationship on debt. We used to do it through short term and we used to do it through wills. It's not, that's really, very important stuff, but that's not what we found was the place to go in because it immediately shows them you actually give a shit. And that's the key to our business, that we actually have to, it's very easy to say we care, blah, blah, blah. But you've got to show, you've got to build that relationship and that trust by doing something basically for free, which doesn't pay for the rusks and coffee at all. So we've partnered with Meerkat, David O'Brien, who's an ex-corporate beast out of Mutual. He's got a very, very good business. And I've been sort of looking at it for a long time. We've actually just recently made it official that we are going to pass that debt side of it. And if there's no debt, that's fine. Then we can carry on and get to the next step. But we're finding 90% there's a debt issue, either within personally or within their business. People have stripped out resources, reserves to help staff, blah, blah, blah. So there's the issues. And, debt might not be like pure debt, but it'll be like lack of resource that we need to repair. We need to restructure that. So, that's how we enter the process. We use IWP to a large degree. We're trying to base our business on that, and then asset map. I mean, I also thought, oh, nice little pretty picture. It'll be simple. Where, let me tell you, any closer than that, if you drill into that product, it is huge. I mean, it can get too big and a little bit overwhelming, but if you keep it simple, I use it as almost the front page. The IWP stuff's very accurate and it's very number driven and it's very, those sort of that type of a client would love it. but not all of them like it. But I use the asset map, even with the pedantic number of driven guys, as the front page. We're still getting there. We've had a few shambles. Trust me, it doesn't look great, but we're getting there slowly. So yeah, and then the last thing, it got very bad press when I was at PFA, like all those years ago, from lazy managers, was Pareto. Oh, I promise you, that's a good product. That is, it's about obviously your practice and the way you operate, but it also gives a lot of clarity to your interaction with clients and how you can service clients correctly.
Frank, what I'm wanting to know is what do you actually give clients? So let's say a new client comes in, he goes through your process. What do you give him a plan? Like what do they walk away with anything? That's kind of.
So okay. So we give them very little because we bring them in right in the beginning. So the plan is not our plan; it's their plan. We ensure that they develop it. We don't give them reams and reams and reams of product and pages and stuff, but we go through that with the very tedious upfront onboarding, if you want, for want of a better word. But they have to understand what they have, and giving them a lot of documentation, as Brian said, they never read it. So they come back to you in a year's time and say, well, what have I got? I said, well, we gave it all. No, what have I got? We don't know. So we try and keep it as simple and as clean as possible. It's a 1-page, 2-pager, and then we see them regularly. And we do review, as you said, the review after year 1 is too soon. But we do it. We tick it off for phase. But most of the work is done in year 2 and 3. So they walk away with very little, actually. We hold it all for them. We try and hold everything for them, and we make sure that if they ask for something, they can get it. But we don't bomb them with a whole lot of documentation. We cover compliance and all that stuff, but that's not the issue. No.
Okay, great. Thanks, Frank. I want to ask Simon. I want to ask Russell. I know Simon's at the vet, so I'm not sure if you can speak. So, Russell, can you give us an idea of what you give your clients? So we don't want to slip into the process, although it is important because the process kind of tells us what we give when. But I think what we want to talk about more is like, what are we practically giving clients, a new client who walks in?
Yeah, great, thanks. Yeah, so mine, I would say it's a bit of quite similar to Brian, or like a bit of that. So I also find with a lot of clients that in the first meeting, I guess you could call it from a medical point of view, I diagnose a lot of their needs or their problems. And it's the first 1 to 2 meetings. It's a lot of education because, like Brian said, I have the same problem as well. Well, not problem, but I would say the same concerns as well. It's like 95 to say 98% of my clients, there's also a huge lack of trust. So they haven't really understood what they have in their portfolio, aside from not really getting advice or service when you form a plan. So the first meeting is kind of like understanding them and then like explain to them what they have in their portfolio, and kind of explain a lot of their terms and so forth and that as well. And then a big thing I've also started implementing more within the last 2 to 3 years is getting accountability from the client. So I also do accountability checks, or check-ins as I call it, live check-ins with my clients, say every 6 months, to see how far they are. Because a big thing I've found over the years is that we could do all the work, give all the best advice out there. But if the client doesn't understand what they're doing, or they don't make the decision, or they don't action or do tasks that are, they're responsible for, there's a less likelihood they're actually going to progress on their plan. And then it comes back to for some unknown reason, them blaming us, of saying, oh, well, I'm not here, what did you do wrong? And then it comes down to like a product when it's actually not product, it's pretty simply advice. So coming back to it, yeah, I would say in the first meeting, and what I also find is that I kind of diagnose and say, okay, if you've got a risk problem, or estate legacy, business problem, and all this as well. And then to make it easier for the client, I think that's another thing I found is that you have to break it up, because for a lot of clients, they have more than one need or area that needs seen to. And before, in my earlier years, yeah, I used to use Xplan as well. I used to generate like a 15-page or 18-page document, that covers everything, and it's accurate. All the figures are there and everything, but it's too much for the client. So, and especially clients are quite discouraged when most of them are, when they come to you and they realize that like my finances are a mess. And now you throw all these plans at them, it's very overwhelming. So I usually start off by saying to clients, okay, let's start with like one and then work with that. And this is what, what are my responsibilities, what I'm going to do, like an plan of action going forward. And this is what I need you to do, or what are your responsibilities. So it's also like speaking to Frank's mention, you make the client become more involved in the sense that they are actually involved in part of building that plan. It's not you just creating the plan for them. They have to be involved because that also adds to accountability. So with each section of their need, I usually compile. I use SMAP predominantly. I use SMAP and then I use a one-page type of financial plan, and that's per need basically. So that gives them a good indicator of like, okay, this is what my situation is, this is what we're going to do going forward, and this is what the outcome I'm striving for. And then when we have check-ins every 6 months, I mean, I check in with most of my clients every 4 months, quarterly meetings, but say every 6 months is a check-in. We see of like, how far we progress, because that's another thing I found. And the link that Brian sent in, actually know the planner, that's quite a good term to use, is accomplishments. Because another thing I found with clients is that as humans, they want to see progress, and that adds the momentum. So for example, it's difficult to say, oh, you need to save so much to retire early at 55, and that they see it as like, oh, this massive, overwhelming goal they have to reach. But if you break it up into steps of like, what are we aiming to achieve every year and so forth and all that, it makes it much more easier or digestible, I guess, for them. So with a lot of the needs, I split up into smaller milestones so that they at least know that every time we have a check-in, they accomplishing or progressing. And internally, they also see that, oh, that's my value I'm getting from you versus what I experienced before. But yeah, to answer your question, I use a 1 to 2 pager like SMAP and a 1 page of financial plan, basically, per need.
Okay, great. Thanks, Russell. Yeah, I think something we finding more and more, and I think it's through COVID and where the world is now with interest rates and markets down and everything. I think what you said is quite true. A lot of people feel they can get very discouraged. We had new clients in here last week, and they're like, everything is a mess, and they're like, and you've actually got to do is you've got to say, okay, look, almost let's not worry about the 65-year-old Russell. Let's see where you are now and what you can do over the next 5 years, 10 years, and let's get you on that path. And we're watching the 65-year-old. We'll get it. We'll sort him out. But let's just start with that, because I think if you're able to make clients feel positive about their finances, because generally it's negative. I mean, if you're able to make them feel positive and feel like they're getting traction and they're making a difference, then you're going to get more buy-in. And the more they buy in, then the more they're going to actually achieve for themselves. So I see a lot of guys saying, they like the accountability check-ins, which is cool. I think how we do that is interesting, because I mean, we can do that through emails, through phone calls, through WhatsApps. There's a whole lot of ways of doing that. And maybe that's something we can actually chat about as well. What I am picking up is that the 60-page financial plan is probably dead.
Yeah.
We maybe need to tell the FBI. I understand that they have a competition to run, and I'm probably going to get sued for saying this, but that's fine. But I think it's not really what the modern day client wants. I think even delivering something in paper is a problem. I think people and what we trying to, and we've done it a few times. So Alex has done it very well with a client once, where he knew the client was on the road, and he actually created little PowerPoints like we would normally do, but he videoed it with him and the insert like talking. I'm not sure how he did it, but it was really cool. So the client could actually sit wherever he was that evening at work and run through the advice that Alex was giving, and he was actually talking to him. And I think getting creative around things like that, I think that's probably where the world's going. And I think if we're able to do that, that's probably a lot more personal than sending a document that someone's going to print out, because they probably never will. And if they do print it out, like it's going to lie over there on the desk, and eventually it will get thrown away, or it's a year later. So I think The challenge we have is doing what compliance needs us to do. We over-regulated, but that's only because we haven't regulated ourselves, so we can't complain. So there's what compliance demands of us, and then there's what the clients actually want, which I think is evolving at a rapid rate as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then if I may just add, sorry,
Yeah.
before you pass on to
Sure.
Simon, I think 2 points I also find that I've learned that's made a huge difference as well. And it's ironic because we spoke about this and now it's a big thing. We spoke about this like a year to 2 years ago about behavioral finance. But what I've been doing with a lot of clients in meetings as well is, especially in like this market environment this year, that's been quite volatile. You know, there's been a lot of panic or bad news and all that. And it's a brave step, but I picked it up also from a podcast that is not technically bad, is to challenge the clients on like, okay, you know, if they're scared of this happening, like worst case scenario, basically, you know. So I've had talks with clients, for example, we don't really talk much investment performance, but I do talk to clients about, you know, what are their fears and all that, you know, people thinking that we're going to go back into Great Depression and all that things. And I said, okay, you challenge the concept like, okay, if we take your money out and we rush to cash, you know, what are your expectations or what are your outcomes looking like then? Or if we do this thing that you're thinking about, like challenge what's on their mind, because that's what clients are using us for, is also a sounding board of like, you know, I have these thoughts or ideas, and in my mind, I'm subconsciously justifying it, but I need an outside unbiased third party to say like, you know, am I thinking along the right lines or am I just overthinking things? And most of it's behavior. So I find that also adds a lot to our meetings, like having those conversations. And I think also to your accountability thing as well. Yeah, I have it with a lot of clients, and it's something I picked up from like my bodybuilding prep as well. That was probably the biggest takeaway I got from my coach, is that having regular check-ins, and it doesn't have to be in person. You could even send, like I have with some clients with the depth, for instance, where we've created like a depth action plan, and I've sent them like a meeting reminder request on this date every month or every second month. And obviously you can automate it so it doesn't take too much of a time. It's our check-in and this is our plan. And I would generally just send them the voice note. And coming from my experience with like the modeling thing, it also inclines you to stay committed. Same thing you could do with any client, go committed, because the feeling I had was that it was weird. So I have check-ins every Saturday, but it's weird in the sense of like you are more inclined to stick to the plan because you know that there's someone that's going to check up on you at this point in time, and they can pick up if you haven't been following the plan, you know. So I find that helps a lot. And then like what Alex said, yeah, I would say that's also very helpful. There's a lot of tools. I can't remember, there's one video too that I used, but I also did that for clients where it doesn't take a lot of time, maybe like depending on how tech savvy you are, 30 minutes or something like that. But I would just do a asset map check-in review thing to know them where they are. And I would record it and then I'll send it on certain days based on my clients. Like, this is just a quick check-in with a link. Here's your asset map. And I had some clients that come back to me with that, and also the WhatsApp voice notes for the depth, that they found it so helpful because it kept them accountable and they knew where they were going. And then the actual PDF file that you would send, the 1 or 3 or maybe 5 pages plan for that need, it's just further adding weight to what you've just advised them, you know, that they can look back for reference. And that's what they'll look at when they have meetings with you.
Yeah, great, man. I think the challenge also is how do we record all these interactions? Like you talk about using WhatsApp and all that. It's one of the reasons we're taking on a new CRM, because we're realizing that moving forward, you know, Xplan and all the local stuff doesn't actually allow you to integrate that kind of stuff. And it's really, that's how clients are wanting to communicate, you know. So that's a challenge as well. Haley, I know Simon's at the vet. Haley, I want to ask you, I know that you are working for an established practice as well in Cape Town. Can you share with us what you guys are producing for your clients in say a documentation, something that reflects a plan or anything like that?
Yeah, hi everyone. So yeah, I'm still obviously getting to grips with the whole process and learning as I'm going. But we do have quite a structured process that we follow when we're bringing on new clients, and then in the like annual review with you know, clients that we've had for a while. So we have like the introduction and a discovery meeting. And then from there, we will then develop the financial plan, and it is a document that we send out to clients. Yeah, we do also make use of asset map, but we present the document to the clients. So when we walk them through it, there's a summarized presentation of a bigger document that we then sort of just show snapshots of the important parts that, you know, you need to emphasize to them, and then so that they also like left with something to take home, so that they know this is where you were, this is where we want you to go, and then from there, how we maintain that is through like, you know, our ongoing relationship with you, and we are your like accountability partners throughout this journey. And then I think that accountability partner will come through in our review sessions with them, because we then, you know, go back to what the plan was and where we are on track with that. Yeah, in our review sessions, though, we do speak to the performance of how, you know, the portfolio has done. But obviously then with that, speak to reasons for certain movements and how they're tracking, you know, towards that. So the review is also a document that we send out, but like the financial plan, there's also like a presentation that we then summarize things with.
Okay, and that original, that summary or that document that your clients get, how long is that, and what exactly do you have in that?
Oh, I don't actually know pages offhand. I would
Just roughly.
Yeah, the financial plan is a lot longer because we break things down into all the products, why we've recommended it, and why we moved them from, you know, A to B. So I would say that's about 20 odd pages. While the review, I would say, is more 8 to 10 pages long.
Okay, so
Yeah.
is the review kind of like almost minutes of the meeting?
No, the review is not minutes of the meeting. The review is done prior to actually having that meeting with the client.
Okay, so as you
Yeah.
say, does that speak more to performance and things like that?
Yeah, it speaks to the performance, but also we loop in based on what we chatted about previously, how we've implemented those changes. So I suppose it's like a follow-up on what was chatted about in the last meeting, and how it was implemented. So like,
Okay.
because we a more established firm, we sort of have our tiered clients. And then with that, obviously the larger clients get, or the more,
That's fine. That's fine.
More complex clients get reviewed every twice a year, and then the other ones once a year.
Yeah. Just on that, I think we got to get over ourselves. Our larger clients are larger clients. We earn more from certain clients. That's just how it is, you know. And there'll be time when larger clients become very small clients, like we have a few at the moment after COVID.
Yeah.
And then so I looked at a client the other day when I started working with him about 24 years ago. He was earning 5,500 a month. He's in PE, his net worth's about 130 million now. So, you know, you nurture a good relationship with the clients, and you walk the path with them. So great. Big clients become small clients, small clients become big clients, but they all need our help.
Yeah, and I suppose it also just depends on what transitions, you know, they foresee in their life, and, you know, how much hand-holding the client needs throughout the process. So it's very much determined on, you know, the state of mind of the client at the time and how emotional they are towards whatever decisions they need to make going forward.
Yeah. Just to share what we do as well in recording all of this. So we record all of our meetings. If they're online, we record them like we are here. And then we'll have a client in a meetings folder, and in that there'll be the date of, let's say it's a review or our onboarding process. Those clients, those meetings each have names, and in there we'll save the PowerPoint that we use. We'll save the recording of the meeting, be it either voice. So if we're in a meeting, we have app on the phone, we record that, and then the actual minutes of the meeting. Because then it's quite easy to go back and you know, but then it's all bunched together. Okay, is there anyone else who wants to share what they do? Some of Yondela, we haven't heard much from you. Everyone else, Brittany, I know you don't want to talk a lot. That's fine. Andre, glad to see you back after a while. And Tim, you might have some insight. So just stick your hand up. Anyone who wants to share something with us, we'd appreciate that.
Yeah, so I think I kind of also go off the same. I also use Asset Map. Benny recently, maybe a couple of months back, he introduced that to me because I was really frustrated with the process that I had, in my practice. And so that's been really helpful. But something I did notice is, yeah, so sometimes people don't want a lot. So I like what Russell said, where you give people like small segments or small things to work on. And that's really, really helped me. Okay. So that's really helped, trying to get the message across and helping people just get through one milestone at a time. But yeah, I don't give people any physical documents because I try to predominantly work online. Because most of my clients are in Joburg and Cape Town. Got a couple in PE. So most of them, I see them over Teams or Zoom, and then I send them the asset map reports, and then I just write the minutes that we spoken about. So, but I think it's tough. Hey, I think the resistance that I get is people don't like to read. So it's trying to develop something very concise, very to the point. And then sometimes people want to read more, and then when you give them more, they still don't read. So I don't know how you guys been doing this for over 30 years and not losing your hair. So, but yeah, it's just a simple one pager with the report, and it takes time though. I think the frustration, I think what you said is, sometimes I work in a Blue Star, so we have targets that we have to meet. And because I'm trying so hard, and because I come from like a South City background in PSG, so these guys were very detailed in their process and try to give the clients time to make decisions. And trying to work like that is not working in a sales-driven environment. And I'm just losing my mind. But I'm trying to manage the beast of reaching targets so that managers don't get on my back and still being able to give clients, good reports and good financial advice. But it's tough.
Okay. Yeah. No, thanks, Shondeli. You broke up a bit there, but I think we got the gist of it. So you're basically saying where you are, you have a few targets and things, and that's obviously putting pressure on you versus being able to take a bit more time. Yeah, we get that. Thanks for sharing. Tim.
Yeah, I hope I'm the only Tim, and I'm the one I'm being asked to put some input. Obviously, from my perspective, the big thing that always comes up is how are you communicating with clients on a regular basis? And from our experience, blogs, newsletters, websites create a nice foundation. But obviously, as people are tailoring more of their engagement with clients, as they are starting to explore things like WhatsApp and digital meetings or virtual meetings like this, the tech stack is expanding considerably. It was great to hear Asset Map coming up a lot. I've worked quite a bit with them just in their own strategies and communication, and believe it to be an exceptional tool. In our years of dealing with advisors, I've always come back to the word bite-sized chunks, which I've seen coming up in the chats a couple of times here. As a client myself, not a financial planner, if I have to go through my bank statement at the end of the month and see all my debits coming off for my different products and stuff, I get overwhelmed and I panic, and I'm just like, you know what, Dave's spoken to me, he's told me those are all necessary. I'm just, because the words become, after a few years, the different products become mixed, and at the end of the day, I know I've got a good relationship with my advisor, and I can just mail him, text him and say, Dave, are we still on track? Do I have everything I need? My advisor, interesting enough, does not meet with me nearly as much as you guys all meet with your clients, which is making me wonder if I need to start challenging him on that. But the tools that you guys use to stay in touch, and I also often bring in the perspective of how are you talking to your clients in a way that is not necessarily always product or market centric, so that when you do have something to talk about that is product or market centric, they have this other base of rapport and trust. And I always hear a lot of meetings and time going into updating clients on where they are, and that little video you guys sent yesterday on the group about what is it, achievements, I think it was such a nice word of where you've come and where you're going, and also the language that I'm seeing to become more inclusive now of we're working on this together, we're planning together, not I'll put a plan together for you and dump it on your desk. It just struck me now, if you guys spend weeks planning and you've got extra staff helping you and you've got extra product consultants coming to you and you already know what you're doing and you already know the products, and you put this plan together in front of someone who has no clue what 95% of that plan's about, there's no way they're going to digest it, assimilate it, and engage with it. It's just not possible, especially if they're only going to have a 1 hour or 90-minute meeting. So creating regular chats, and also often use the word readiness, places or opportunities to discern readiness with your clients is super important to know. What part of the plan do we share today? What part of the journey and the achievement do we focus on today? So I'm just going to throw that out there for now, and any feedback would be great.
No, Tim, I think that's great. I think what is definitely what we're realizing is more important, and I think we've always been kind of pretty good at it, but we're realizing we can get a lot better, is humanizing what we do. If you're using newsletters that come from one of the big life companies, a lot of them are going to be, unfortunately, about the market and about products, and because as good as those people are, they just don't think like we think, and they don't always they don't sit in meetings with clients. So I think the challenge is, so I know that's what you do, is you ghostwrite stuff for people like us, and I've seen the work you do. It's great, and it humanizes. So I mean, we trying to do that ourselves as well, but I think that's really important. Instead of like a 3 or 4 3-page letter, rather keep it 300 words and just get a point across. And I think that's a challenge. But and I think that's the medium of video, which is like, I did it a bit during COVID, and it's flipping scary, because you look and sound very different than you would like to think you look and sound. But I think that's got a huge part to play in future. June, I see you have your hand up.
Dirk, I thought, let me just use this opportunity. I mean, thinking about the financial plan as well. And I've actually had 2 people send me a message. So I thought I can do this, and I will kind of reach out to them after this. But I maybe just want to show 1 or 2 slides if I can do that, because I think, this should actually show a client what the current picture looks like, and that should be in a plan. So for me, from Old Mutual Wealth's point of view, a plan should contain where a client is currently at, what does that life look like now in terms of what's important to them, and then where do they want to go to? And then in between is the actions and the advice that you give to get them to where they want to be. So it's very simple. So I'm just going to quickly share 1 or 2 slides. Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to put this in presentation mode. So that's our planning tool, which Dirk and Brian spoke about. So your current picture, whatever you plug in, it's a cash flow model in the end. It's going to give the client a picture of sustainability of their lifestyle. So the asset that they have, how possible would it be to maintain the lifestyle that they want? And I think the power also lies, Dirk, you spoke about that, but it's to get the life that they want to be supported, okay, or they want supported. I think that's a tough conversation. And then I wanted to show this, and then I'm just going to go to the following one. So whatever plans you then put in place, it will show you graphically. So if we put certain things in place, and it could be any trade-off discussion, save more, spend less, so you change the lifestyle. You look at the strategy, so assumed growth rate. So it's 3 numbers, and that will affect the 4th number, which is how long the money would last. And this conversation is completely product agnostic. So I didn't say you have to invest in an endowment or a discovery, savings plan or old mutual wealth linked investment. It's about what's possible for this client, making it very personal. We can talk about maybe an inheritance coming in because, again, we're increasing the asset base. We can talk about disposal of certain assets, we're increasing, but what is possible for this client to get them to where they want to be. And I think the most important thing is then people are always talking about the value of advice. So that would be the advice gap. And I think Brian put that very nicely as well. So if you then decide, so obviously there is some actions that needs to be implemented. So, I work with practices that will include the specifics into the financial plan. And then, like Brian said, it could be an annexure, which could then also function as the record of advice in terms of what are those actions, which products, what's the purpose of those products. And this is for life. So this is a retirement picture. We could have a very simple picture that shows a death picture, which includes estate fees. So it would be executors' fees, estate duty, capital gains tax. And then what does this picture look like for the people that I want to do planning for if I'm not here anymore? And again, the same picture for disability. So without getting too involved with product detail, it's just what does that current picture look like? And what are you concerned about? What's important to you? And to me, that should be contained in a financial plan. It could be a one-pager. What I like about the model, it's there. So if you don't want to send them anything, you've had the discussion that helped co-create this plan. And then maybe you could only have a record of advice, because I know compliance is important and you need to have that. But this thing sits there. And, if you use this very successfully, I've seen planners where clients are too afraid to do anything. They would contact the planner and then say, okay, but if I do this, I want to give my son 400,000 for a deposit on building a house. How's that going to affect? So they plug that in to see how much does it pull back. I've seen very successfully with a review meeting where markets are very volatile. So we've implemented now, it shows you how long your money is going to last. Now we've had horrible markets, but clients don't realize how far it actually pulls back the plan. In some instances, even with worse market conditions, it might pull back the plan with 1 or 2 years. And in their minds, they see a 200 or 300 drop in capital. They feel like it's very, extensive, but it might not be that bad. Behavior and acting on those emotions might actually, the behavioral tax might be worse than the market's actually pulling back. So it's a very nice conversation point, but to me, this could be on the financial plan or just on the system. Like there's a lot that said they don't even give a financial plan. And I thought I just wanted to share that.
Sure, thanks, June. I think something that's quite clear is that the way that we present what we do is certainly changing, and needs some thought. As I say, that's why we realized a long time ago that Explain wasn't going to do it for us, and we looked at everything locally, and none of that was either. So but I think that's like really, really important, because a lot of, even like the plans we would deliver, a lot of them are based on what we have to give clients because of regulation, because to be compliant, but to the client, they're actually quite the opposite. They probably scare the hell out of them and confuse them even more. And this is also why I really believe and I get that there are people who do transactional work, and there's a space for that. There are people who only want that, but I really believe that the cream of the crop, the Rolls Royce, is doing proper lifestyle planning, where you build relationships with clients that are long serving and not necessarily with an individual. I think that's the challenge as well, is to build them with the business, because if it's just with me, there's a lot of risk there, because something happens to me, then the client has to find someone new to work with. And if they've been working with you for 15 or 20 years, that could be quite different and could be quite disheartening for the clients as well. And so, I mean, we facing that challenge. So as much as it is people like, maybe they've dealt with me for ages, and I'm saying, look, you're going to also deal with Alex and Catherine and Ben. We got to explain to them that it's actually for their benefit as well. It's not because we're trying to get rid of them. But I think we probably need to focus a lot more on you know, what are we trying to deliver to our clients, and how do we get the outcomes, help them get the outcomes that they need? Because the most beautifully printed financial plan with graphics and everything is not necessarily going to get them to take any action. Anyone else want to add anything? Anyone who hasn't shared anything yet? Mike? Okay, Mike, you need to go. That's fine. Barry, I know you've been in the industry. You're new to this side of the desk. Your feelings, your thoughts. I know that you've been exploring a lot of this.
Thanks. I've also started using Asset Map, and I had my first client meeting with a pair soon to be married. And the thing that was a bonus for me was I sent out the Asset Map to them. Am I clear? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I sent out the Asset Map to them as a couple, and the husband to be completed it and submitted it. So his wife to be didn't get a look in, and I realized that a bit late. So I sent her on WhatsApp a link to it, to her own plan. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was meeting with them at 5 o'clock, and she had it done in 20 minutes flat. So you know, it was a very useful sort of opening conversation. Starting off, and they're not married yet; they're marrying in March. Yeah, and I quite enjoyed it because it was the sort of the beginnings of the fun part of chatting about money in marriage. Was I said to them, look, are we planning as a couple, or are we planning sort of individually for now? And the two of them, so bless them, it was probably a bit of a rough question to be getting so early on in the day. They had to have a bit of a think about it, but it's fine. I mean, this is a vulnerable space. So, I mean, money is a vulnerable space, and money in relationships is a vulnerable space, so, or a contentious space. So, or potentially. So yeah, it was a great opportunity just to chat through finances. A good way to take it on. Your question, Dirk, as I understood it, was what do clients walk away with? And what I've done to date is actually give them a fairly detailed individually created report, and it just simply takes too long. And I think to Tim's point around keeping things sort of punchy, one of the things that I like about what Lisa Benny said in his Asset Map sales spiel, and he does it very well, is you know, just do the next thing. Just do the next thing. So it's, you know, what's front of mind for the client, or what's very clear that needs to be addressed based on the plan. And so I am busy moving to short and sweet. We're busy looking at the F&A results that come through from Asset Map's very basic F&A tool. So for sort of cheap and cheerful clients, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but you know, if we don't want to spend the time doing a full IWP with Obviously Wealth, then you know, we just need a quick solution. We have to use Xplan. That's part of the FSP that I'm a part of. We have to use Xplan, and I must say I find some of the planning on Xplan a little bit difficult. Those that know the tool well sing its praises. I am not there yet, shall we say, to put it nicely. So I think what Xplan offers is speed and a really nice space to have a conversation with clients. There was some talk from somebody, and I can't remember who it was, just talking about the review process on Asset Map. And that got me thinking, because I actually don't know how I would run the review on Asset Map. So yeah, I'd be interested in teasing that out just at a personal level. Reviews, Dirk, in answer to your question, you know, I'm not there yet. The only reviews that we're doing are with clients that we're taking on, so where they've got an existing plan, where we're taking them on from, I don't know, other planners that have left. We do a review on, you know, what they've got so far and where they're going. But to me, that's pretty much the same as an onboarding meeting.
Okay, great. I think what's quite apparent as well, and I think what's quite important for everyone is, you know, we're all going to have our different processes and our different tools, or that we're comfortable with. And by doing that, we're able to then actually kind of push our clients into what to expect when we have review meetings and all of that. So again, there's no one size fits all, but yeah, that makes sense. Ben, I know that you had your hand up earlier.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I mean, a lot of guys said that they don't give the clients too much, maybe just a one-page plan, or the client doesn't leave with anything. So I understand that from the plan perspective, but just in terms of compliance, are people then getting a record of advice, or where is it being recorded? For example, why you went with a premium pattern, a certain product provider, why tax-free and not an endowment? Where's that kind of stuff? Is it given to a client in a document that they sign and give back to you, or how they taking care of the compliance side? That's, I just wanted to find out what people are doing and those kind of things.
Okay, Russell, can I pick on you? Guys, I'm not sure if my connection's bad, but okay, go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, it's, from our side, I mean, because we're a tied entity at the moment, the compliance is, I mean, we obviously deal with the client on the compliance, they sign and blah, 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 but that is all stored in Xplan. And we have obviously a new business section in the larger practice that deals with all the compliance stuff. And, the client can ask for anything and we can get it to him very quickly. But from my experience, they don't really want to hang on to all that compliance stuff. And they get their policy documents. That's, yeah, hideous.
Yeah, I think the challenge is that by law, we actually have to do a record of advice. And I know that with our compliance officer, she's told us that the thorough minutes that we do does suffice. So we actually don't have a document that's called a record of advice. We just have very thorough minutes for after every single meeting, even if it's a coffee catch up.
I love that.
I think it's a challenge. Yeah, it's something we battle with, because we would love to have a document called a record of advice, although client wouldn't know what to do with it. But it's trying to make something that again is humane and speaks a normal language versus what the regulator wants.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I want to implement that comprehensive minutes thing into our practice. I think it's brilliant. But they get it, the client gets a record of advice. It's part of the process, but not from us. It goes through with his policy document, and it's all on there. So, yeah.
But it's not, what's not on there is like Russell said, if you chose BrightRock instead of Discovery, or why you went age rated or compulsory increase or level contribution or term. And I mean, that's something, I know that's where Ben's going with this. And, my view is like, so let's talk risk. When it comes to risk, we only work with businesses who give us great service, because it's too difficult otherwise. Businesses who have reasonable underwriting, so you can take your guesses there, and then we kind of, when you talk to clients about premium patterns, 99.99% they've got no idea what you're talking about. We do explain to them, and we'll explain why right now. So right now we've actually got a few clients who are in trouble now. They're not, because of what's happened, current situation around the world, they're battling to pay their premiums. And I'm saying to my guys, instead of Dirk sticking to his way, this is the only way. I realize I've actually got to be a bit flexible, and this guy's business is in trouble. Instead of just reducing him and not giving him the cover that he needs, and he can't afford it, maybe we actually need to get it on an accelerated contribution or age-rated contribution, and just make sure he's got the cover that he needs right now, and in 2 years' time we can revisit it, and hopefully his health is okay. We can change that. I'm realizing that right now we actually need to do that because that's what the client needs right now. If we just say, well, hang on, I only believe in the flat premiums, which is what I kind of, in most cases, do believe is best. We might just have to change our views and say, right now, this is it. But then there's a real need for us to explain that in the minutes or the record of advice, because it could come back and bite you. So, I mean, that's where we are now. So, yeah, Brian, what do you do? Because I see you shaking and nodding. So, no, I'm interested in like what you do, because I mean, you're saying you don't like the product side of it, but I'm sure you come across cases where the product the client is in is simply not good enough. Maybe it's old benefits, or the waiting period's too long, or the premium patterns are incorrect.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
So in the, I think I alluded to it slightly a bit in the beginning of this meeting, but what I do is when I give the advice section, so the agreed action section of my plan, that could be, if it's a simple client and estate, 1-pager, or it could be 4 pages of like they will be writing. And so what I'll write there is I'll break it up into investments, then there will be maybe budget, and then it will come to like risk. And so then I will say, like, kind of before a spreadsheet, a table I put in where you are now, based on the planning. I don't talk about the shortfalls or whatever because it's in the plan itself. And I'll just say, based on this, we identified you need extra cover of X amount. Then what I'll do is I'll put in reasons why you need the cover, just in layman's speak, like why impairment cover and not income protection, for instance. I'll talk to that. Then I'll talk about, I'll reference a spreadsheet where we would have done quotes for the client. Maybe I would generally use like 3 different long-term providers. I'll talk about, we discussed you're a Momentum Medical client and you've got Multiply, and the premiums worked out very good for you, so we went with Momentum. And then I'll talk through that. I mentioned we chose a level premium pattern because based on the table in the quote, you can see how it gets out of hand if you use an accelerated premium. So I'll touch on that there as well. It's like one line item. The quotes they sign anyway, they have to sign it before the app is processed. So that is signed, and then my advice ties into that quote. And then that spreadsheet as well, that table where I might compare 3 different providers, whatever, I'll just take a snapshot of that and I'll drop it into my plan, and that will come out in the plan as well. And so that is how I record the little bits of advice. But for product replacements, I will go through, over and above that, I'll give the client the PRAR form, I think it's called, product replacement advice record. With my compliance guy, we haven't been able to get away from that because there are too many things you have to mention. And so it becomes easier when, like, if you don't earn com, for instance, there's a lot of blank sections. It just becomes like not applicable. But because that's what they're trying to, I think, root out is the churning and the conflicts. But once you address that, it's extremely tedious to try and look at like what's the difference between the products, which is partly why sometimes client might not be better off, but a few rand a month, but they might remain there because it's too much to explain to the client the difference in T's and C's between Discovery and Momentum, for instance. So, but with that product advice record, the replacement record, I will complete as thoroughly as possible. And I have found sometimes that can take me 3 hours. So about 3 hours to do one. So I hardly ever change clients' products. So, and that's a problem sometimes for clients because they might have had a gripe with like Discovery or something, very common. And then what they'll do is they will say, I want to leave this company. And I'll say, oh, geez, I'm not going to help you do that. Can't I tell you how much cover you need and you just go on an app or something? But so we covered everything as far as possible in that plan. And then the client will sign that on DocuSign. But like I said, I go through those 3 or 4 pages of advice with them and not really much else. I do feel comfortable that they've signed something, that they've seen the writing, it's in plain language. And so if there's ever a dispute, well, I haven't had that yet, touch wood, but if there's a query or something, I can go back to that document and say, remember we spoke about this in your language. There wasn't jargon. An ombud or something can't say I was burying them in industry lexicon and they didn't understand what they're getting into. And I just try and make it as simple for them as possible. But I lean a lot on the quotes we get from product providers. And I always say refer to that quote in which they would have signed. So I kind of tie the two in.
Great. Okay. So basically, we're doing what the regulators want because we know clients don't read the quotes or understand them. Because sometimes we battle to see or understand them. I see you got Simon back. Hope the dog's okay, buddy. Go ahead.
How's it going? Sorry, I'm on mine. Yeah, back of the tail amputated, almost like a pinky length, so not ideal.
Shame.
It was a messy affair, but I was listening for the most part when I was waiting there. Yeah.
Your sons are going to be distraught.
Yeah.
I said your sons are going to be distraught.
I don't know. I think they'll be all right. Her tail's bandaged up, so they won't see it, but they'll definitely be asking. Yeah, there was a lot of squealing, I believe, this morning, and then I had to take her in. So yeah, anyway, bit of a mess. I'm on my iPad, so hopefully the video is not too bad or the quality of the sound. I have been listening, and I know you were asking earlier. So I have jumped around a little bit in the last sort of 12 to 24 months in terms of what we use, and the whole idea behind that was trying to make things as efficient as possible. And just listening in on everyone's sort of input, you're like reminded as to how tedious this job actually is when you're supposed to be sitting with the client, and that's where most of the value add or the understanding comes through for them, and then you've got to go back and try and record all of that. So it's super difficult, but I'll tell you what I do very briefly. So on the compliance side, if we haven't signed a disclosure letter in the first meeting, or I usually, if I book a meeting, whether it's a referral or we've contacted someone, met someone and phoned them, and we go and see them. But when that meeting gets booked, I always send out an engagement letter, which is quite comprehensive. And again, I don't know what percentage reads it, but there's a lot of good info in there. If they do or not, it gets sent. And then when they come in, we'll have all the initial meetings and all the rest. When everything's been done, I always send a compliance. So I was listening to, I don't know who actually asked the question. I think it was Ben about, premium patterns you guys have been talking about. So I always send a disclosure letter. This is all sort of post to having done anything. If there's, in our industry, a product that's had to be used or something. So I'll send a disclosure letter again. I'll send a declaration. It's sort of a 2-page where you sort of tick box, have you done a full needs analysis, all that sort of thing. And then I will send a engagement letter again, and the actual record of advice. And so I think I've been telling you, I've been using At Work. At Work's got a lot of the details that I've got like preloaded documents. So all those documents are loaded, a click of a button, and I add them into a mail. It's got their IDs, names. That saves a bit of time. Attach it to the email. It's the record of advice that I pre sort of print, which has got their details in, but that's where I've actually got to go and fill all those things in. And in my template, I've got things like, what did you any suggestions for life cover, disability, so on, premium pattern, why did you choose the product provider? Well, all the necessary stuff. It is tedious. It's very frustrating, and I just think of Yundela or anyone who's trying to do all the stuff on their own. It almost defeats the whole point of good intention advisor who's trying to sit there and give good advice. Now he's got to go and sit back and spend the rest of his day, recording that. It's just counterproductive most of the time, but I understand where it comes from. And then I was just listening earlier, everyone was asking about the financial plan. So much truth is said in, clients don't read a lot of this stuff, and you're putting so much effort into it. And the reality is, if you've done the planning side, the calculations are all there should someone want to refer to it. So I've got those, and I do send it to a client, and I think hardly anyone reads that. But the beauty of it is that in that sort of 12-page, call it an FNA, which I used to absolutely hate, there's about 3 or 4 pages which are really valuable to me. The ones is, have you made any notes? So I usually send meeting minutes after every single meeting, even if it's 6 points. I'll just jot them down, what was discussed, and the key things, you know, to try and sum up the conversation. And then I've always got action items. That's the one thing I've always got, and I often send that through, you know, post meeting. And then at the end of the day, lots of the time, every client has a budget. So if they're limited, you know, we've made suggestions, but they can't necessarily do all those things at the same time. But it's in that financial plan that I call it like a comprehensive one, which I'm pretty sure they don't read. And then I actually pre-print, so like print PDF, 3 of the pages out of that. And they usually, you know, the meeting notes. The second one is a summary, which it talks to what June was saying earlier, sort of current versus planned. And before the summary is needs. The needs are essentially the goals or the things that were important to the client. And that is crucial because they've come to you and you're solving problems. So there are their problems. What does their current look like? What is their sort of outcome need to look like? And then what do they need to do? So it's like needs, summary of sort of the gaps. What do we suggest to do that? And then, you know, the record of advice will talk to the finer details of product, premium pattern, you know, the why. So that I call like a summary analysis. And usually that's the one I will talk to in a mail to say, please read that. If you want to refer as to why we recommend it, they written out calculations in the FNA. So yeah, it's I don't think it's not perfect, but if you're trying to give good advice and seeing a lot of people fairly regularly, we try to make it as streamlined and consistent as possible. And if that means that I didn't, you know, solve everything in that particular meeting, what it does mean is that it's given me time to see other clients as well as that person again as soon as possible. And then, you know, you carry on. It's like a constant work in progress, and anything changes in the needs, then you adjust and you carry on going. But I mean, even doing that and trying to make things as efficient as possible, I feel time constraints all the time. And I really feel for the guys who don't have a team. I've got a really, really good PA who's super on the ball, and my father-in-law also has a good assistant, and she tends to kind of cross between the two of us. But if I've, you know, looked at very smooth operating offices, you know, often although a key man risk, there's like an advisor, and then there's assistants in the background who are all on board with how they do things, but they do that particular area very well and very efficiently. And they all talk to each other and they work as a real team, and the outcome is exceptional. It's like great meeting minutes, a great plan that's summarized, you know, great contact with the client, professionalism in booking meetings and talking to clients and catch-ups. And that's what we'd all ideally like to work towards, but these things also, you know, cost money. So it's tricky, very, very tricky. Eh?
Thanks, Simon. I really appreciate you coming on. I think you shared some real pearls of wisdom. Yeah, I know you've been through the whole thing. And I mean, what strikes me in what you're doing is you've kind of worked out in your way, like what works for the clients for them versus, and what actually works in your relationship with them. In other words, what have we covered? What are the goals or needs? And then where are we going to go? I think really that's all that people want. I mean, if you think if, you know, everyone works with a gym instructor or a tennis coach, or if I go for a golf lesson, all the lessons in the world won't help. But if I try, you know, ultimately you'll go and they'll spend some time with you, but then you got to go away and do it yourself. And then you got to go and play, and you got to keep on revisit, and you just never get it right. And I think that's the role that we play. And the problem we have is what the industry tells us we need to deliver versus what we actually need to deliver, because we know is at loggerheads. And unfortunately, we have to do what we have to do to keep ourselves safe, which is scary. But I think we've got to keep on striving to meet the client more. Guys, I think this has been a great session, really, and I appreciate all the sharing. I think if we saw how many people joined this morning quickly, I think this is clearly something that needs to be spoken about. And like we'll have one more session this year. Guys, if you from this talk, if there's something else that you'd like us to chat about, for those newbies, you can see there's no right or wrong. It really is simply sharing views and experience and ideas that we can practically use. But if anyone has any other ideas what we can speak about in December, please just put them on the group and we can vote on them. And if there are any follow-overs, we'll pick them up in January. But thanks, guys, and thanks to everyone who's sharing. It's been great. Enjoy the rest of the week.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Everybody.